Our next guest is a constitutional lawyer and is the convener of the Kenya Tuitakayo Assembly. He is Wakili Harun Ndubi. Good morning.
Morning.
Good to have you again in the Situation Room.
I am happy to be here.
Karibu sana.
Nashukuru.
Good to see you. As we are commemorating the 60 years, we're looking back at Kenya at 60 and what it means, what strides we've made, this and the other. And we'll be getting straight into that conversation shortly after CT gives you the day's proverb. This week, the proverbs are from Djibouti.
Yes, they are. What an adult sees from the ground, a boy cannot see even if he climbs a silk cotton tree.
What an adult sees from the ground, a boy cannot see even if he climbs a silk cotton tree. I saw somebody posting a comment there, what a silk cotton tree is. And I was like, I know that tree.
You do, eh?
Msufi.
I'm none the wiser myself.
Cities should know Msufi from Mombasa.
Yeah.
You're right. I should.
Now, when you say Msufi, now you can see Msufi.
I can actually even see it.
And how tall the Msufi
No, I am seeing
grows.
it. Yes, and I know it's called a cotton tree.
Yes.
Because it produces those pods that have
Yes,
things
yes.
like look like cotton.
Yes. When you say it, now I have seen it.
You can clearly see it, eh? Yeah. Hapo kwa Mama Eric, when we were growing up in Kimana, there was one very tall Msufi
Very tall.
at our neighbor's shamba. It was the landmark.
Meaning, if you want to give someone direction, you tell them, ukifika malapa, ukiangalia kule mbele.
Ukiwa town, Kimana, you see that tree?
Hapo tu.
Hapo ndio umefika.
Hapo. Okay, Harun.
Yes.
How do you interpret that proverb?
It's interesting, but it's about wisdom. That young people sometimes imagine that they know things and they don't know. Or elderly people know things that young people do not know. Yeah, that's basically what I think it means.
Do you think if the people who came up with proverbs were young people, such a proverb would never have seen the light of day?
If you listen to the young people of today, it's unlikely to hear any wisdom except jibes and funny songs.
Vibes and inshallah, that's what we call it.
Yes.
Harun, first, tell us about the co-convener of the Vugu Vugu that you're now convening. You know, you've done very many things in this country. What is this latest one?
I haven't lived too long. Let me first celebrate my mother. She's 103 years.
Wow.
And she's very strong for her age. And perhaps you need to know that I'm a last-born son. But I've also a twin sister who is my age, slightly a few minutes younger than me. In this country, we have seen many things, but celebrating 60 years of independence is an important milestone. But I think we should celebrate Kenya as it is and as was even before the independence from the Mzungu. Because the Mzungu left, but his legacy still lives upon us to date. If you look at the kind of laws that we have, they are Mzungu laws. We have not, other than the new constitution which we enacted, but which was also kind of a catapult or an outcome of the Mzungu laws, really nothing has changed. I don't think anything has changed. In fact, I keep wondering myself why we are focusing on doing things that are Muzungu-like. When I was growing up as a very young boy, we had grass-thatched houses, and they were cool. They were not cold, but cool and warm. Now we have all decided we are going to have permanent houses, which are not healthy. And therefore, when I hear the government saying that they want to build houses for people, I wonder what is it that they want to do? Why are we not allowing people to build their own homes the way they want? If you recall, during Kibaki's time, he took young people, the homeless children in the streets of Nairobi, and took them to NYS homes. Why are we insisting on building homes for adults like you and I? Why should that happen? City.
You know, I hadn't thought of it the way you just stated it. You've got my mind racing, and it's racing in this direction. I'm thinking, how then would you ensure that people are able to build their house? Because when you are growing up, knowing that I'm older than you, the reason why it was easy to build because the resources you needed to build were available.
Exactly.
Including land.
Yes, it was available. All the resources needed was available.
Exactly. That's the point.
Yes.
That what we need, the government needs to focus on making resources available to people. Reduce taxation. Reduce taxes so that each one of us can make some little savings. And from those savings, we build our own homes.
Where?
But there is land. Where do you come from? You have just been talking about where you...
Let's talk about Nairobi.
No.
Right? The population that's living in Nairobi. They are living in Nairobi, Harun. They may come from Kimana Loitoktok.
Yeah.
But they don't drive from Kimana Loitoktok every morning to come to Spice FM.
Yeah.
They live in Nairobi. Where do you want them to build houses in Nairobi?
Where is the government going to find the land to build houses for people?
In Nairobi.
Yeah, that's the question I'm asking you.
I'm answering.
Well, government owns land in Nairobi.
Government is destroying people's homes. You saw what happened in Mlolongo the other day? They destroyed people's homes because they want to build houses. How do you destroy a house so that you can build another house?
Is this what Kenya Tuitakayo Assembly is all about?
No. The Kenya Tuitakayo Assembly is about a society that is fair and just. So it is a society that we are looking for to have water, to have clean air, to have infrastructure that can allow people to move easily and to permit citizens to invest for themselves, not to force citizens to invest in government. Now you are seeing, I don't know whether it is gossip or whatever it is I'm seeing on social media, that a lot of public infrastructural facilities, including KICC, the iconic KICC, is being put up for sale. Remember, Kanu grabbed it. And when Kibaki came to power, he brought it back to the public. Now, the current government wants to grab and sell it. What does that mean?
That the government is not in the business of business.
Actually, I as I was coming here, I was thinking that government has no business in business. Why should it be engaged in trading? Why is it selling assets? Why is it? I think we have a government that is confused. A government that thinks that making immediate money is the result or outcome that they are purposed to. Because even if you sold KICC and KPC and other organizations, that money will end. It will be used to pay salaries, to pay debt, and it will be finished.
But Harun, the conversation about privatization, if we just to go in there, is not a new conversation. It's a conversation that's taken place over many years. A senior counsel, Ahmed Abdikadir, chaired a team that looked at all these private entities and recommended ways in which the government can divest its interest in them to reduce taxpayer burden going into maintaining these entities and bringing in private sector players to also participate in this and make them more vibrant. It's not a new conversation, really.
It's not a new conversation, really. Yeah?
It's not like you're selling them like bananas and then getting the 200 bob and going to buy miwa to eat.
What I would like us to think about is how do you make those investments, those public entities, serve the people more efficiently and effectively. Not so much as to privatize them and remove government from them. But again, government should not be in the business of selling these institutions so that it makes some little money and pays the Chinese.
So maybe we can open this up a little bit, because here we are looking at essentially Kenya celebrating its 60 years of progression at whatever level. And then this is one of the conversations that's being had at the time. There are very many other things that are being discussed now. There are very many other things that are emerging, mushrooming. Is this where Kenya ought to be? And is this a natural progression that you see a country who's gotten its independence 60 odd years ago? Is this the trajectory that we should still be finding, Kenya should still be finding its feet at this point and in such a way?
Actually, like I said, if I repeat myself, we should see Kenya as much older than 60 years. Okay, as a country, it was started as a trading business by the Mzungu, Ibea, if you remember. The Mzungu is the one who came and gave us boundaries and divided Africa. Instead of allowing Africans to be human beings and relate humanly, we were told you are Kenya, there is Djibouti, there is Ethiopia, there is Uganda, there is this. But for purposes of the reality of today, I think that it is important that Kenyans need to focus on the values that esteem the humanness, Ubuntu. That is what I don't see today. We are a country that is just punitive. We are making laws that you have seen the latest stories about the punishments for very little transgressions. Instead of building humanity, we are seeking to punish humans. And that is really what I think that the country needs to be focusing on, that we need to build humanity, have a human face, have simple rules, not even rules, simple traditions of how people should live. When you see that we have homes for the aged, why should we do that? Why should young people disrespect their parents and take them to homes of the aged? I was very disappointed many years ago. A city will remember that Cardinal Tunga, the late, was actually housed in a home of the aged. How can you take a cardinal from his home and you are putting him in a home for the aged? The point I'm making is this, Latif, that we have lost our sense of human values. And I think this is the time to refocus and revisit those human values. The trouble is, our education system doesn't teach children on how to be human. In Japan, for instance, I am told, I've not been there, I'm told that children in their first 7 years of schooling, they are taught about being humane, being careful of the environment, and being disciplined. That is how they have lived possibly a long life and to a disciplined life. If even in Kenya here, where you find the Japanese companies, you will find that they are very disciplined. They will wake up and make sure that they are at work as probably as early as you guys get here. But for Kenyans, you will blame the traffic, you will blame the weather, you will blame everything.
The government.
And blame the government for delay.
Are you saying, or do I understand you to be saying, Harun, that as we celebrate these 60 years of independence, it looks like we need to revisit, we need to look back at some of the values that we clearly seem to have lost somewhere along the way? And are we also saying that we have a society that, when you look at it, is one which has warped values? And when you have warped values, then it means we are fairly rudderless. That is me saying.
Yeah. Actually, we are on autopilot. We are rudderless. If you recall about the leadership we had at independence, the likes of Ronald Ngala, the likes of Martin Shikuku. I'm not mentioning Jomo Kenyatta because I think he was a fraud, but that's a debate for another day. Those are people who had values. The late, what's her name? The one who was the mayor of Kisumu. Grace Onyango. Yes. Those Jaramogi, those are fellows who held something that you could say, this is the country we want to have. But now we have dealers rather than leaders.
Why did the rain start beating us?
I think when Jomo Kenyatta and Moi took leadership of this country, they decided to make Kenya an enterprise. Kibaki tried to return it back to some of those older values where it would be a country of people. But unfortunately, it was recaptured by the Jomo Kenyatas and the Moi types of people, including the current leadership. The current leadership is actually a leadership of dealers. If you listen to the speech Mr. Ruto makes, or the speeches he makes, he thinks about money. He doesn't think about human values.
For example?
The example is, everything he says is about money. He doesn't talk about human life.
What do you mean?
I thought the entire hustler narrative was about human life and making this human life better.
Thank you, CT, for calling it a narrative. It's just a narrative, nothing more. But the conduct of...
Give an example of a speech where you say the president is talking about money as opposed to human life, and then humanize that statement.
I would reverse the question to you, actually, because you will see that the president, from the time he was campaigning, he was talking about making money. He's going around the world looking for money. He's exporting Kenyans to do work in other countries as slaves, instead of ensuring that we create opportunities in this country so that we can build our country. We are exporting human beings from here. So what is that? How do you describe it other than slavery?
Actually, that is a perspective, a rather adverse perspective, because with slavery you didn't have a choice. When people are given job opportunities, they have a choice. They actually decide. They can decide to stay or not to stay. Unless you're saying that a situation is created that is so untenable that you really don't have an option but to leave if the opportunity to leave arises.
Precisely the point, CT. That is the point I'm making, that we, instead of creating opportunities here and choices, we are asking people... life has been made so difficult that they have to leave. So if they are told you will go to Qatar or Saudi or London or wherever, they actually have no choice other than to leave. And that is the point I'm making, that actually the government is participating in human trafficking. Instead of creating opportunities here so that the likes of yourselves can work and feel comfortable at home, you are now being asked, we have spoken with the government of Germany, so we will take you to Germany to and work there.
You think it's escapist? Do you think it's escapist by saying that rather than fix the systems that the government or that the country as a state should provide its citizens, and because certain infrastructure, whether that be social or otherwise, is wanting, that it's saying, let's, instead of dealing with the issue, take people somewhere else and you never deal with the problem? Is that what you're saying?
That's precisely what I'm saying, actually. That the government has decided it is incapable of delivering on anything, so they are now trading on the lives of Kenyans. They are deciding, we will send Kenyans to Germany, we will send Kenyans to Qatar, we will send Kenyans to Saudi, so that they can go and find a life.
Skilled Kenyans who have an opportunity to work where there is a gap somewhere else. Can you look at it as that?
No, my sister.
Yes.
We are not paying our doctors, we are not paying our teachers well enough, and we are exporting nurses. And yet we have problems here. We have medical issues. We don't have enough medical staff. And we are exporting our doctors. we are exporting our nurses, and yet our people are ailing. Yet our schools need teachers. Yet we are asking that we want to build houses for people, and yet we are sending out artisans who could actually help to build those houses if it was necessary, even though I disagree that the government should be in the business of building houses for people.
As we look back into the many years of Kenya as a republic, Harun, have we made strides? Have we made strides in human rights development? Have we made strides in access to justice? Have we made strides in the big 3 U's? Ujinga, ugonjwa, umaskini.
I think we have made some strides. Let me not be too pessimistic. First, we have increased schools and universities, which is a good thing, even though that doesn't speak about the quality of education. We have a new constitution that has provided Kenya with a robust judiciary. We have judges who have delivered sensible judgments that speak against impunity and against injustices. So, and we have county governments with most of them having level 5, level 6 hospitals. Though I have my issues, especially from where I come. Kisii and Nyamira are very close to each other. I do not understand why they should be struggling to have universities and the level 5 hospitals competing. Because you can actually transfer a patient. What they need to do is to build roads and ensure that we have people, we have access. And that would also go for Migori and Homa Bay, I think. What is disappointing, though, is the conduct or the manner that we select members of commissions, independent commissions and the constitutional commissions, especially IEBC. You select members and they become secretive. Instead of being open, they are secretive with what they do. And that was not what the purpose of the new constitution was. So I am hoping that at this juncture of 60 years, we can reflect and say, how do we open up government? Because one time I listened to the chairperson of the Ghana Electoral Commission, and he said, the only secret thing about election is the actual voting. Nothing else should be secret. But here, the actual voting is not secret, but everything else is. So I think there is a need for the country to reflect and move forward to say, let elections be open, let governance be open, let people... Kivuta Kibwana tried to do a good thing of it when he was governor by even displaying his budget on notice boards so that people would say, this is what has been allocated for this particular location. Now we have budgets and you are told to go to IFMIS and you are in Turkana where there is no electricity.
There's electricity in Turkana.
No, the Turkana electricity is the turbines. Those, what are they called?
They're called wind turbines.
Wind turbines. But they transfer that electricity to Nairobi. It is not being available for people in Turkana. And then we are making imports of electronics expensive. So people do not have smartphones to be able to access the internet to see what the government is doing. But you are told you want to get paid, use IFMIS. How does my mother know IFMIS?
Well, there have been various attempts at pushing for open government and open governance. Are you saying that we have not made strides?
We have made some improvements, I must say. I must admit, I'm not saying that it's not.
But just not enough.
It's not enough.
For example, budget making is now a very public affair.
Let me tell you why it's not public.
Tell me.
One time, I was in New York, and the parliament wanted public participation. So I wrote a small email and said, I will be back in the next 3 days. I will make my contribution. Parliament made a report that I had made my contribution. So what I'm telling you, the perception of public participation is actually a fallacy, because they ask people to use the internet, and most places do not have access to the internet. The government has promised citizens that they are going to make it available to have free Wi-Fi everywhere. But where do you find free Wi-Fi?
In markets.
In markets, in hospitals perhaps,
Yeah.
And hospitals.
Some government offices.
And some government offices.
Airports.
Airports you will find. But who are the people who use those services or those facilities? It is not your Wanjiku.
It's the elite.
It's CT who will use it. And yourself, Latif, and myself, and my sister here.
So, the people for which, because just historically, the people for which a nation state has been formed to govern over them and then to provide a life whereby individuals do what they need to do in terms of paying taxes, what I hear you saying is that at this juncture, 60 years down the line, there are certain things that should not even be conversations. They should not be discussed at this point. That if we want to say progressively how you're developing, and we're not even saying catch up with anybody else, we're saying that at the very bare minimum, certain markers should have been met. And are you saying that Kenya has not met those markers and that it's time to really look back and say, come on guys, we need to catch up even with yourself? And we're not even talking about the rest of the world, that the very basic minimums that ought to have been met. I hear you saying that, but then I also see that quite some strides have been made. If I hear the, chatter from around the continent, Kenya's looked up to in terms of what it's been able to do, in terms of having a robust environment where business can thrive until a certain level. Kenya's done very well. In terms of having relative stability when it comes to conflicts and those kind of issues, Kenya again stands out in terms of what she has been able to do over time. In terms of a social structure, in terms of social infrastructure, in terms of even just being able to get 1, 2, 3 done, relatively even keep the lights on, Kenya's not done too poorly. Do I hear you say that even that, against what the rest of just the continent says, that Kenya's still not punching up? It's not meeting its weight still?
Precisely. That's. I hear you. I think that Kenya has not done enough as would be expected. If you look at the levels of corruption in Africa, Kenya stands out as one of the most corrupt governments, other than Nigeria.
Welcome to the party.
Yes. 2, if you look at Kibaki's government, he decided that government officers are not going to drive fuel guzzlers. Here, now, if you look at the president's motorcade, it is extremely large and of fuel guzzlers only, black cars.
That has never changed.
No, it has changed. There is a time.
There was a statement made by the then finance minister, Uhuru Kenyatta, when he drove into parliament in a Passat, and he said, these 1,800 vehicles, CC vehicles, are what's going to be the norm. Was it?
After
Did it become the norm?
They bought a few.
They bought some. That is the other element of corruption I'm talking about, because they were giving themselves business. Government is trading with itself, or government officers were trading with themselves. So I'm sure you have possibly, this is gossip again, about the ownership of the people who are selling Passats being connected with the Uhuru family. So that is a question that needs to be examined. But today, how can Kenyans be suffering? How can Kenyans be suffering, and then you are seeing pot-bellied men with big black cars, V8? Where does a V8 take you? Where a Passat cannot take you, or a Suzuki cannot take you?
It's different.
When you are Jaluo,
Transports you to a realm.
when you are Jaluo, you will think it is different.
Harun, it is different.
So you think the government is still living large?
The government is living large.
And that is to the detriment of the citizens.
Exactly.
Again, back to, how does the government get away with it? Who encourages the government? Is it that if you look at let's go back into, your hood in Kisii, in Nyamira. Would you get elected if you came there driving in a small Volkswagen Suzuki?
That is the trouble, that
if you became
citizens,
a governor and you were driving around in a small vehicle and you're saying, me the governor, will they stop?
Let me tell you, that is actually one of the problems we have as a country, that citizens are allowing these things to pass by or to go on, believing that a big man must live big and appear big. If you are a small person with a small... There is a time... What was that MP from somewhere in Ukambani who rode on a bicycle? Was he called Munyoki? There's a guy who campaigned on a bicycle.
Yes,
and he was elected. But
there was also a young man in Meru.
The one who was given a car by Uhuru.
Yes.
He was also...
He had to be initiated into the club.
He had to be initiated into the club. That's the problem, that citizens, even me, when I go home, I have a black car. When I go to the village, people expect that I should either buy them food or something. Almost every day we receive calls. We want money for this, money for that, money for this. So the public has a duty to shape the attitude of government. Now, the trouble is the government has shifted that duty and made that it's the one that decides how the public behaves, and that is really my trouble, that we need to have a lot more civic education, political education, and people get to understand that government is supposed to serve them, not to be their boss. Yes. Unfortunately, people think that our thief is our thief. There is a saying, I am told, are you Kikuyu?
Yeah,
I'm
me, I'm not.
Yes, there is some. I was speaking to some old mamas, and they said kama mtoto anaenda kuiba anajitafutia. So they have internalized theft.
It's hustling.
It's hustling. Yes. That's the hustler narrative, that you are going to be looking for money for yourself.
Where did it come from? You see, where did it come from? Because you're talking about a certain value system that we are seeing manifested, which wasn't always there, and yet it's come. It's been brought forth, and it's alive and well.
I think it has been generated and brought forth over time. Like I said, I would blame Jomo Kenyatta for it. I would blame everybody, actually, every leader who was led after Jomo Kenyatta. The time we had people who worked with Jomo Kenyatta and Jomo Kenyatta kicked them out of government, that's the time there was a value system. There was a commission called the Ndewa Commission, which enacted some regulation permitting public servants to do business. So these public servants established their own corporations or companies and were doing business with the government. So they created this situation of corruption, and it has become endemic since.
Just to show you the progress we've made, this current government recently ensured that that thing was further entrenched. It is legal for government officials to do business.
Exactly.
Yes.
They say it's legal, but you see, Kenya is so legalistic rather than being moral. That's the problem we have, that we are just looking at the law and ensuring that A, you get what you do this by a due process, or B, you get punished if you don't do.
But don't you think it's a good start? You see, if we didn't have good laws, then perhaps even this conversation we're having would not be possible, because we wouldn't have a benchmark. We wouldn't have anything to compare it with. You see, now when someone deviates, we know, because the law exists. If when the law wasn't there, or when the laws that we had were limiting, then one could get away with a great deal. That is why people could be detained, because the law allowed for people to be detained. So the subject of human rights, something that you've been a champion of for as long as I've known you, which is a really long time, would have been a non-issue if rights were protected. And even if rights are protected, there are those who are always inclined towards doing the very thing they're not supposed to do. Now, Eric asked the question of the progress we've made. I think, if you ask me, among the many things that we've done, the very conversation we're having right now is one of the biggest signs that a lot has changed in this nation. And that the 60 years of independence has been a big thing.
True.
What do you mean, the fact that we're having a conversation?
The fact that we're having this type of conversation, and we're even saying that this particular government is inclined towards pilferage. That alone, this was enough for you, and we know this, you finish your speech and you expect that you're going to be a guest of the state. The fact that you can have the conversation is progress.
And still go home.
And remain alive. Yes. The fact that government decisions can be challenged in court, and in some cases very successfully, that is a great deal of progress. These are things that one may have thought, imagined could happen, but one didn't envision would happen in their lifetime. The fact that you are seeing the court system actually being absolutely revolutionized to the point where you can see there is a direct attempt at ensuring that the Mwananchi, as we call him, has a fair shake of it when it comes to matters of the law. That is, in my mind, tremendous progress. Now, I know you look at me, Harun, and thinking, given where I come from, yes, I am not going to refer to the expressway. Okay?
I was looking at you, thinking about it.
The expressway.
Yes.
What we don't seem to have been able to do is to tame our collective national appetite for doing everything within our means, especially that which is wrong in our attempts to accumulate wealth. That is the thing that we have been unable to do. What we've been able to do very successfully with every successive government is to show just how much more we can do in our efforts to disregard the law, again, in these efforts to accumulate as much wealth as we possibly can, irrespective of what else is the consequence of our efforts. That we've done very well.
Good treatise, but I will tell you something. I think the citizen is not yet sufficiently empowered to tame government. I think that is really the problem, because we are held hostage by government. Yes, we have made progress. We have made, and I already admitted that there is even the new constitution itself is an important development, which other countries are copying and looking towards Kenya as a good example of having a good constitution. But when I look back, especially at the current government, you see that it is trying to go back on the constitution and claw back on it. So, yes, there is progress. I mean, the fact that there are roads, even the expressway, we have. When I was going to secondary school near a city's home, we used to drive, get into those face me matatus.
Seven aside.
Niangalie. And the roads were not tarmacked. But now, today, I can drive to my village, and the only distance that I cover that is not tarmacked is about 150 meters to my home. So there is progress indeed. We must agree. But I think we need to say that in terms of human rights, there is a balance we need to make between fiscal infrastructural development and human development. And that is really where I find difficulty with.
Okay.
Yeah.
Harun, we thank you very much for joining us today. It's been a while. Come again soon, right? And we will have more conversations. Harun is the co-convener of the Kenya Tuitakayo Assembly. He's told us about it. Sounds like a very libertarian assembly of people seeking less and less government. But thank you for coming. Keep it here for more conversations.
This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.